Hi, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Brave Briefings, the place where people can come and share their thoughts, their ideas on what we can do to stop harassment, to stop gender-based violence, and to make the world a more peaceful and safer place for all. Are you brave? Hi, I am Lois, your friend for forgiveness from Walking Without Skin. And I would love to welcome today Marina Pearson, another brave speaker. Hi, Marina.
Hi, Lois. Lovely to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Would you like to tell our audience a little about who you are?
So, I am a mother. These are the roles I play in life, I guess. I'm a mother, an author, an international speaker, a coach, an investment, an investor, property owner. Gosh, lots and lots of roles. But ultimately, I'm an adventurer and somebody that's been exploring and searching for many, many years. I have a very curious nature and always want to get behind simple concepts, but ultimately in depth. So I always want to see what's behind something. And I've been an intrepid explorer for 45 years now. And I've been on this planet for that long. So ultimately, I am very curious about people and I'm very curious about behaviors, but I'm mostly curious about how the mind works and how it, once we understand how it does, that it can bring about a whole bunch of peace and harmony into our lives.
Well, that's fabulous. So then you're ideal for this program.
I hope so.
And what do you write about?
So I've written 2 books. Let me just grab them. Hang on a second. I've written 2 books. One was called Goodbye, Mr. X. And the other one is The Joy of Being, which that was my last one. And really they're about how to free ourselves from our feelings and thoughts, mainly. If that's the common thread between them is when we dissociate ourselves from our feelings and thoughts and see that they're not ours, and we can see that thoughts are just feelings and feelings are an indication of the kind of thinking we have, there's so much that we can see beyond our conditioned mind, the habits of thinking that we have, that can completely change the reality that we're living in and make it much more beautiful. So I came across an understanding about 7 or 8 years ago, but interestingly enough, I'd always been, as I said, a searcher, and there was a sense that I would come across a truth, and I'd been sort of looking for it for a while, and I kind of intuitively knew that when it arrived, that I would know. And it arrived literally 6 months later after I had this insight, I guess you can call it. And it arrived in the form of a book. And I remember reading about clarity and wanting to know how I could get clarity. And there were no how-tos in the book that I read. And I got very frustrated because I was like, well, there are no how-tos. You know, I was very much method-based at the time. And when I finished the book, regardless of whether it had any how-tos or not, and it didn't, I ended up feeling very different. And I started to have a whole bunch of insights into how I was being and behaving and so forth. And it just caught my eye and I got curious about that. And so I went on a bit of a journey and have been ever since, in deepening my understanding of how life works and how our mind works and how it doesn't work, and how when we don't know that it doesn't work that way, that we get into all sorts of pickles and jars and get very confused, and we can cause a lot of harm and damage to others innocently. but at the same time, when we are more peaceful and tranquil and see that our mind is designed that way and we do really well there, our relationships and our quality of life just improves exponentially. So without doing much, in fact, because our mind is designed to heal and our mind is designed to be an open vessel, if you will, to the voice of our soul. So when we can actually see that and experience that more of the time, life is easier to navigate. Some people call it alignment, flow. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. So if we have ourselves peaceful and calmful, we can all be brave as well, and we can stop this this pandemic of violence. So tell me, what is your tip on how we can stop this harassment and violence?
Well, I've had it very close to home recently, and not physically, but more like a sense of feeling unsafe or a sense of feeling intimidated by a certain person in my life who we had a massive falling out, and it's kind of cost. It's basically the experience that we've been in has been, I would say, quite a violent one. Because I am all about peace and harmony, and for me, if any kind of like discord would always be a major deal for me. But I'm also seeing now that, firstly, when somebody is feeling super insecure, and in this case, I would say that both of us have been, but we have different flavors of that insecurity. Some of us want to control. Some of us want to retreat. Some of us want to lash out, and that can come in any shape and size. It can come in the form of intimidation. It can come in the form of threatening. It can come in the form of all sorts of other things. But ultimately, those are the sort of flavors. And when we feel that our experience has got something to do with the outside world, we're more likely to be feeling that insecurity. And therefore, we have these insecure behaviors. And therefore, the world responds to those insecure behaviors back, right? So if you are in a place of peace and love and harmony, the world responds back to you pretty much in the same way. And I would say that my experience of that has been I've had that very personal experience of that. I can see where I've had a massive jump in consciousness, where I have more love and understanding for myself, and how that actually has a massive impact on the outside. So the relationships that I have currently, or how people respond to me, or people offering me stuff without even asking for it, or people wanting to help me without even asking for it, but they're just like, I really love your energy. So, and I'll give you an example. My son and I were at the doctor's the other day, and we had to go back to give our details to the admin there, and we were waiting, and in front of us there was a lady that was having a really hard day. She was really pissed off and upset. And she was having a go at the guy behind the counter, and he was just like, I'm sorry, but he was getting all threatened. Anyway, she leaves, and he's like, if you had a better attitude towards life, life might treat you better. Anyway, and then we show up, and then I've got my 6-year-old son who just lost a tooth, and he's like, I lost my tooth. And like, it's all happiness and light and jovial, and the energy just shifted hugely in that moment. And I could see, and the response from him to us was very, very different. So how we be is usually a reflection of how others are being too. Now, that's not to say that you might be in peace and love and harmony, and you won't have some asshole come through and go, I'm going to be, pissed off and angry at you because I'm having a hard day. And that's not to say that we have to go into that with them. We can be compassionate. If we're in love and peace, we can actually have enough space in our being to be compassionate and go, wow, they're having a really hard day. I'm not going to take that personally, because we all do it. But what I do see is that when we spend less time thinking that somehow the outside world has got anything to do with the way that we feel, we spend less time in that insecurity. When we can see that the way in which we create our reality is through thought, and that is the only thing that's ever going on, then what happens is we can't blame or shame or point fingers, really, because the only thing that's ever being created is that through which it comes, which is us. So the minute we see that, we're not, our feeling and well-being isn't dependent on someone else. And that, I think, is hugely liberating, and can be very liberating for those that are, you know, that would be an incredible way to stop the violence, because ultimately violence is just a reflection of the thinking we have in that moment.
Sure. So it's such a different way of approaching it. So if you're peaceful and calm, but I think about those sort of immature teenagers, and they see this nice, energized or peaceful and calm person, and then they start teasing them and harassing them about that, about, oh, look at him, he's a woo-woo person, or she's hyper, whatever, and they start bullying them based on that. How do we stop that behavior?
So, you know, what comes to mind is a story of a 9-year-old, 10-year-old girl. And the story came from her mother. She was being teased at school, and she was being bullied at school by this boy. And she's told me this extraordinary story about her seeing her daughter go through this. At the beginning, her daughter was super upset, but her daughter had an insight. And she suddenly saw that this boy must be having a really hard time, because otherwise, why would he be so horrible and mean? And what came out of her was just this such wisdom. And basically it was, Mummy, you know, this boy must be really unhappy to be spending so much time wanting to hurt me. And I'm so glad I don't have to live in that world. I live in this loving and peaceful world, and he lives in this horrible world where he has to be nasty and mean to other people. He must have a lot going on at home. Wow.
Well, that, you know, that is brilliant, that we can have that understanding and that compassion, and we can take care of ourselves, and we don't let that impact on our well-being. My objective is to stop that poor child who's going through whatever he's going through or she's going through, that is causing them that unhappiness that they've got to go and bullying. I want to stop that so we don't have bullying in the first place.
So understanding where their experience comes from is such a major deal, because, you know, as somebody who was bullied and as somebody that did bully, I know that I was confused and misguided about where my experience was coming from. So when I thought that I was feeling powerful because of what I had done to someone else and made them feel smaller, I would go and do that again. Until I realized that actually that feeling was nothing to do with me doing that to the other person. That in actual fact, it was just all being created by me, regardless of whether I was doing that or not. I just had a story around it.
So if the other person doesn't react, then it's pointless carrying on with the teasing.
Right, but also to understand that the teasing, you know, the feeling you get from doing that doesn't come from what you're doing. It comes from the creating, you're creating that in your mind.
Well,
So
how do we teach that to those kids that are doing the bullying?
So, in fact, interestingly enough, I'm actually working with teenagers at the moment, and we have a program called the iHeart program, and it's an incredible program because we get to see them understand where their experience is coming from and how they create their experience. So once they know that their well-being is intact, regardless of whether it comes and goes, because of course our well-being gets clouded like the sun, right? So our well-being is always there. It just gets clouded from time to time by our insecure thinking. But once they can see that their well-being is always there, they then kind of go, well, actually, then if my well-being is always there, then there's no need for this behavior, because we just get lost. And so once they understand that there is a thought feeling connection, and that there is a system, that we have a psychological system, and the psychological system is we have a thought that creates a feeling inside of our body, and then we have a behavior with that, and then it changes again, and that keeps on going and going 24 hours a day. Once they can see that the other person's got nothing to do with the way they feel, the way in which they're behaving has got nothing to do with the way they feel, everything changes, because they see that the way they feel is being created by them. And so any outwardly thing no longer becomes relevant.
Oh, but we've got a lot of work to do to get everybody to feel and think like that.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I've spoken on many stages. I've written books, and when I share this with teenagers, and when I share it with adults, there's always a sense of resonance. There's a sense of like, I understand that somehow they know that already. They've just forgotten, you know. I was listening the other day, and in the Hebrew religion, Jewish religion, they talk about this bit here between the nose and the lips here, this little bit here, the dent, right, is when you're kissed by the angel when you come into this plane that makes you forget everything.
Okay.
And once you can see who you really are, once you experience who you really are, then love and understanding is pretty much what you want to spend more time in. So bullying and teasing and being mean makes no sense anymore. It doesn't make any sense anymore.
Sure. Wow, Marina, there is so much in what you've been saying today. I think we can talk for another 2 hours on the topic. But I thank you. I think you've given a lovely new insight into how we can develop brave in people by just being calm and relaxed and compassionate and loving yourself, and that will emanate and transfer to those around us.
Well, I mean, you know, Nelson Mandela is a beautiful example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. A wonderful man of forgiveness and compassion.
I mean, incredible, you know, 30 years in prison, and then he came out and he's like, no, I don't want, you know, any violence. I want to forgive and move on. I mean, wow, 30 years of his life. So I don't know, to me, that shows that there's a different way in which we can be, and that has impact, that doesn't have to be the violent way, you know, tit for tat.
So true. Well, thank you, Marina, and thank you everyone for watching. Remember that you too can be brave, and together we can stop the scourge, the second pandemic. You can contact Marina. I'll put her details below, or you can contact me at Walking Without Skin. And do join us. Be bold, be brave, and fly free. Thank you very much, Marina. Thank you, everybody. Tune in again for another edition of Brave Briefings. Bye.